Okie dokie. So we've been talking the last little bit about animatics, right? And I brought in a project file that I would like to kind of showcase to you guys the process that we're going to go through to make these animatics, okay? And let me just play it for you once, and then we'll go through and take a little bit more of a critical examination as to how all of this can get put together very, very quickly, okay? All right. So here's the animation. Pretty easy. It's a simple little 3-shot animation, right? In every sense, this is kind of, in my imagination, the beginning of a much longer like launch sequence for this rocket. But let's talk about how we can get to this end result pretty quickly and what we need to do next to really ensure that we are rendering or exporting these animations out in a way that gives us a pretty quick result, okay? So a couple things in here that I want you to look at. First and foremost, I am live switching all of this at the render, right, upon playback. Does anyone remember how to do that? Because these are actually 3 separate camera angles, right? 3 separate shots. Let's take a look at them real fast. So if I change my viewport to view, so here's my master shot, okay? If I just play that shot, you can see that towards the end, there's the rocket coming up, okay? A simple little push in. I always like to put movement in all of my shots, okay? Small little movements go a long, long way, and I really want to emphasize that. Small camera movements. If you're going to have a moving camera, make that movement be very simple, okay? Don't make it all herky-jerky. You know, believe it or not, camera movements in Hollywood are very simple, okay? We should also make our camera movements as simple as we can. Yes, sir, go ahead.
If we have our objects moving but our camera stationary, is that okay?
Of course, absolutely, okay. Yeah. And if, you know, in the case of this particular shot, both the object and the camera are moving, but the camera is moving very subtly, just to kind of give a nice sense of depth right there at the end, okay? All right. So there's the master shot. This is called the master shot because it's an establishing shot. In this one shot, we establish the location and, of course, the character, which is the rocket coming out of the ground. But then I kind of conceptualized a couple other shots. I thought it may be fun to actually have something on the front, kind of serve the opening of my missile silo as the title of the actual animation itself. Okay, I thought that was kind of a neat idea. I made a very, very quick model. Here's the animation. It's pretty basic, nothing fancy going on here. And there's the shot itself. That opening shot is really only designed to be a couple seconds, just right in there. Basically, I want to cut right around in there, okay, before the camera or before the object physically passes through the render camera. Then I have another shot. Here's shot 2. This one, you can see, again, very basic, simple. Kind of showing a little bit more of a medium shot of the rocket coming out of the silo. Yeah.
I saw your 901 thing just appear after it goes under.
It does. It completely just blinks off, right?
What happened there?
I think, let's see, I don't remember if I'm choosing to animate its visibility. Yeah, I think I am. Okay. It's one of two things. I'm either animating its visibility, or within one frame, it goes from being in the silo to being outside the silo, okay? I don't remember how. That's fine, yeah, it's just an illusion. We're never actually going to see, or in my imagination, when I was plotting this together, we don't actually see this part of the animation, right? By the time we get here, that part of the model is gone. Okay. It's a cool thing about making films, right, especially in the computer, is that we can break and bend reality to get what we want, right? It doesn't have to be an actual recreation of this movement, right? We can fake it until we make it, okay? We can make the images that we want to make, right? All right, let's jump over here. And of course, if you look at the render camera settings, I've keyframed which camera the render engine's going to render out, and this is that sequence once more. Cool, huh? Pretty neat. All right, so let's look at a couple things in here as to how I'm physically going through and doing this. All right, so here's my environment. This is a little bit more flushed out for an animatic, okay? But it's still pretty basic. What don't you see in here? Textures, okay? You don't see a lot of textures. I'm using simple colors and simple materials to provide the visual separation between all the elements, okay? What else? Do you have a comment, Isaac, or no? Great. Okay, cool. I made a very basic, simple scene just with the mesh sculpting tools, and then we're going to talk about how I got all these rocks and grass on the ground here. It's actually a really neat system in Modo called Replicators. We're going to look at that today. It's an incredibly invaluable tool in helping us craft small details like environments and what have you. Okay, replicators are going to be the core of a number of systems going forward for us. So we're going to spend some cycles today looking at it. All right. Let's look at the actual item list itself. It's pretty easy, okay, and pretty simple. Okay, when you're putting some of this stuff together, remember, it doesn't have to be like really great geometry. You can break things, like you can have objects penetrate through each other. Here's a great example of this. Am I ever really going to see the bottom of the missile silo? No, so why am I going to detail it out? And why am I going to start creating a mover mechanism that makes sense, having this little pedestal kind of rise, okay? That's not important. Yeah?
The part where the actual launch pad, does it intersect the land, or did you actually cut out a hole?
I made a hole in the ground plane itself, okay? If I turn off my hanger and just look at the ground, yeah, you can see that I just made a hole in my ground, and these are the doors. The doors are somewhere in here. Here we go. Here's the doors, okay? See, just a hole in the ground, right? This initially started off as just one big cube, okay? One big flat plane that I subdivided, and then I used the sculpting tools to very quickly create this simple, small environment.
But I do want to ask you, if we're not going to see objects that are intersecting, does it matter if they are?
No. And down here at the bottom of my hanger, this is such a great example, right? I'm not going to see this part of my scene, right? So the polygons can pass through them, okay? Get out of the idea that these have to be like perfect models. We can get away with it, right? We're never going to see that part of the scene, so let's not spend a lot of time and energy creating something that the audience is fundamentally never going to see, okay? Okay. If you look at the shader tree, there's not a whole lot going on. It seems like it's pretty complex, but it's not, okay? Very simple descriptions. Use colors and simple materials. I don't want you, of course, at this stage, importing textures, only if you really, really need to. And if you choose to, just use basic projection types. If I see one object that's been UV mapped in these animatics, I'm going to be a grumpy Pat, okay? Because we're going to try to get through these things as fast as we can, right? Remember, it's not about making the final model, okay? We are not making final geometry for this, okay? We're making a representation of that final geometry. Actually, this is unfinished. I'm actually working on this at the moment, so I apologize for the raw nature on this. Yeah, that's right. It's my big thumb drive. So I call it Big Daddy. Okay. Huh? Do I like BioShock? Yeah. I think I saved them because that's how I roll. I think this is the wrong model file, but we'll find out. Okay, so this is something that you're going to see here in a couple weeks. I'm in the process of kind of finalizing this a little bit, so you'll see this here again. This is the lovely town of Prosperity. Okay. There's my train. Okay. Now, I'm making a pre-visualization of what's going to ultimately turn into a much, much larger scene here, but this is the town, okay? Now this took me, like quite literally, this is about 45 minutes worth of work to create all these buildings, right? And I spent probably half that time looking at reference photographs to make sure they look pretty okay, okay? Very, very basic, very, very simple, okay? I did this because I wanted to start figuring out the dimensions of all of these things inside the camera lens itself. Let me show you another little bit here. Let's look at the actual render camera, okay? This is going to be a windmill. That's my placeholder for a windmill, right? Because I want to start this little animation with a windmill, okay? Just spinning kind of slowly inside the scene. And then as the camera begins to move, and pay attention to the background objects here. What's missing is the train station because I ripped it out because I was working on it a couple days ago. So the windmill blades are slowly spinning. Chug, 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 chug. There's a gigantic building here right now, okay, or there's supposed to be. With that building there, you really don't get a good sense of a lot of the details, and then choo-choo, chugga, 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 and here comes the train, okay? That's the shot, okay? With the train station in the way, right around here-ish, you really don't see those background buildings in a lot of detail. They're important to be there because they start to add a sense of dimension. It starts to remind our audience that there's a world that this train station and train kind of participate within. But man, with that big train station in the way, you really don't see them all that much, right? So do you think I want to spend a lot of energy making them incredibly high resolution with beautiful textures if they're just a background object? No. The answer to that question of how high resolution or what level of detail do I need to create the background buildings at only was discovered when I created the pre-visualization of it, right? Because now I actually have them in an environment with a real camera, with a real lens on it, capturing what the scene is going to look like in the final shot, and I can make some pretty good decisions on it, okay? And if you look at what the camera sees, you better believe I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this building right here, okay? This one only is in shot for, with the train station there, you probably only are going to see the sign. The one that I'm probably going to put the most energy into are these three because they're going to get the most on-screen real estate. Okay.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
If things are like really far in the background,
Uh-huh.
can you cheat as, now I know we're not going to go over this, but can you cheat as not to even model, but put an image map of opacity on it?
You sure can, and that's fine. That's fine to do a matte painting, to put a picture in the background that describes your scene. Now you got to be careful with that, right? Because as a camera's moving, you're going to lose that sense of parallax. It's not going to feel like a member of a three-dimensional space. It really is going to feel like a photograph that's right next to your render camera. So I would only suggest doing matte paintings for things that are way off in the background, okay? Like a mountain or the clouds. Those aren't things that we need to render in the computer. A picture or a painting will be sufficient. Yeah?
Or could we use, let's say, one of those smart environments that are on an environmental preset?
I would, for an animatic, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to see this shot up-resed in a couple weeks from now. That's kind of what I'm spending all my free time doing is up-resing all these assets to help you guys see and understand an important idea called referencing. And we're going to talk about referencing in detail. Because once we start with the animatic, advancing on into the next stage can be really, really tricky if we're not careful, okay? And there's some really efficient workflows, one of which is called object or item referencing, that will help us make the jump from the animatic over into the previs, or from the previs over into the final, to the rough animation, final animation stage a little bit easier. Okay, so we'll talk about that. One other thing, as you're starting to work on this, okay, and since I have this up, we'll just use this one as an example. Yeah. Let's do this. Only show me lights, please. There it is. Let's turn that one off. Okay. All right. I really would love you guys to take some inspiration from an earlier module in this class when we talked about camera constraints. Camera constraints are your best friends, right? Curves are never going to have sharp edges unless you use the Bezier curve, and don't use the Bezier curve, okay? If you use the traditional curve tool, you can create some really good, and we have another curve called B-splines, which are really cool. I'll let you guys play around with those. Those are never going to produce sharp edges, okay? And they make wonderful camera tracks that are very easily controlled, okay? I do that for most of the shots that I work on. If it's going to be a moving camera, I'm almost always going to path constraint that camera just so I can go in after the fact and change how that camera moves and behaves just by changing the points on the curve. It's incredibly powerful, and I use it a lot. So go back to your alien invasion. Those path constraints can and should be applied to cameras, okay? Simple camera movements. If you look at the path of my camera here, is it going crazy? Is it going all over the place? No, it's basically following a very simple path, okay? A nice, big, smooth curve. Don't forget our principle of arcs, okay? Everything in our world moves in an arc, including a camera, okay? And it's the height isn't changing all that much. Without my train station in there, it kind of feels empty. There's a big train station and a platform and some really cool props. They're going to be there.
Do you have a model for it right now?
It's on my laptop. It's not on the desktop. But it's pretty neat, right? And that gives context to why I've positioned the path where I've positioned it. Okay.
I have a question. Could you just keyframe all that instead of use a path?
You certainly could. What makes a path constraint really kind of attractive to me is that I can edit quickly, and I don't have to worry about keyframes, right? Changing the path, the motion path of a camera is just dragging points around in the viewport. I don't have to worry about the timeline, okay? It just simplifies my workflow a little bit more directly. All right, let's go back over into our spaceport here real fast, because I want to talk about how we can get some of this stuff out of Modo and into a place where we can no, texture locators. There we go. Let's talk about how we're going to get all this stuff out of Modo and into a way that is usable for us, okay? Because right now, what I'm ultimately doing here is that I'm taking the render camera or the render camera options here, and I've animated it. I've animated this channel, right, to do that live switch that we were looking at earlier. Let's go back into render camera, okay? If you look carefully, here are the keyframes for that channel. However, as I look at it, man, there's some things in here that I want to change, right? I'm not too thrilled with some of the cuts in here, but that's okay. And this is the beauty of working with separate cameras inside of our workflow, is that I can render out a little bit of extra. They're called head and tails, okay? A little bit of pre and post roll on that camera so that when I'm editing these things together, I have some wiggle room, right? Because I want to be able to create a pipeline, even at the animatic stage, that gives me choices, okay? I don't want to render out 150 frames. I think this is a 150 frame animation. No, I'm sorry, it's 270, I think. I don't want to render out 270 frames 3 times. That's not efficient, right? That's not what we're after. However, what we are after are small little individual chunks that we can render out, okay? Before we render some of this stuff out, check out this. This is kind of neat. I always like this. We're basically going to make an OpenGL capture of this window, right? So what we're going to do here is that let's turn on some options here. Let's turn on some of our visibility options. Under drawing and control. Now, I don't have my wireframes turned on. I'm also going to turn on my GL background. Let's do it same as the environment. Do I have an environment in here? Yep, there we go. There's my nice, lovely blue sky. This helps, okay? If you look at the way that I've set up my shader tree, I'm actually using an image in the background to shade my environment. Actually, I'm using a couple of them. There it is right there. So by changing and loading that visibility option in the viewport, the image that we're going to render, and I hesitate to say render, because what we're going to be producing at the animatics are not full-blown renders, right? Because those are expensive. Those take a lot of energy to make, right? We want to do these GL captures, but we can make our GL captures look pretty good just by turning on some of these visibility things. So I almost always turn on the visibility of our background, okay, right there. GL reflection, let's do the same thing. Let's do environment, or same as GL background. Yeah, it's a little extreme for me, but it's a step in the right direction. Let's see what it looks like throughout the entire animation. Yeah, it's a little extreme because I have very, very reflective objects inside of my scene. So I think I'm just simply going to turn that off because I think that's detracting from the scene itself. There we go, that's better. Other things that I make sure that I do when I'm about to render out or bake out some GL captures, under the visibility section, I absolutely want to make sure that show locators and texture locators are off. Under the active meshes, I almost always change my wireframe overlay to none. Normally it's on colored, which is going to show us wireframes and everything. You just simply turn it off. Yeah, I can also see my directional light down there. Let me turn that off. Don't want to, but now I lose all my lighting, so it looks like I have to have it on, which is a bummer. In addition, turn off your work plane and your grid, okay? We don't want those in there. I don't want that work plane in there. My environment is currently covering up my grid, but I'm going to turn both of them off just to make it a little bit more clean, okay? I'm still seeing the indication of my directional light down there. It's just a directional light. I could move that outside of what the camera sees to get rid of it, but it's in a spot that's not too offensive, so I'll leave it there as is, okay? All right, now comes the fun part, right? We've set up a basic rough framework for our animatic. We've changed we've set up a couple cameras, we've made some movements in them, I have a really good sense of the timing. Let's get all this stuff out of Modo into a format that we can then use in other applications, okay? I'm going to try, let's see, yeah. Here's what I do. I try to make the size of my viewport match the aspect ratio of my render. Something like that. If you have these big black bars on the other side, those are going to be included in the GL capture that we're about to produce. Something like right there. I think that's it, okay? And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to render out each one of my shots. So this is the, let's see, what shot is this? This is shot 1. So I want to render out shot 1 from the first frame of my animation, and let's see, maybe over here to right about 117. Let's take a look at that. Let's look at shot 1. So here's shot 1. Yeah, I don't know. I think I want to make some adjustments to where I'm cutting this camera to the next angle. So let's have it go to right about, let's see, I lose the visual interest rate. Yeah, if you look at the details on the top here of my rocket ship, right there is where it starts to pass through the camera's clipping plane. So I'll stop my preview right there at 122. And this is how easy it is. The GL capture system is only going to create a small export from the sequence of frames that are currently visible in our scene itself, okay? So I want to capture from 1 to 22, and by going into our sequence settings, we can easily do that. Let's open up our sequence settings. Bloop. Okay, so I want current start to be current end to be 122. There we go. Let's test it. Let's just play that range of frames. See what we get. Wonderful. Okay, cool. I'm ready to get rid of this. Let's capture this one shot. Making these captures, they're often referred to as play blasts or offline renders, is really easy inside of Modo. And we do it in the bottom right-hand corner of our interface. Of course, we have Preview GL. We can even do it at half and quarter quality. But what I like to do is Record GL, because this is going to make a QuickTime movie or a series of a series of frames, an image sequence. Let's do this. So this is going to be rocket ship And then we have to be very careful, right? Yeah, go ahead.
The format there, what about API?
On a PC, that may show up.
Oh, on here it's not on here?
No.
Oh.
Yeah. The AVI file format is really only found on the Windows side. And in my opinion, we should avoid the AVI file format at all costs. It's not real great. So have a naming convention for the OpenGL viewports that you're gonna work with here. I put offline in mine, okay? Because does anyone know the difference between an offline shot and an online shot? You're about to learn something here, okay? An offline shot is low quality, designed for the editing process, right? It's usually of much smaller resolution, much smaller file size, and not a representation in any way of what the final frame is going to look like. This offline system actually goes back to the traditional photochemical days in the film world, right? Because you go on set and you're filming a nice little movie on traditional 35 millimeter film. Right? You roll the cameras, you record everything, or excuse me, you film everything like back in the 50s and in traditional film. And then what would happen when they start editing that film, they'd take the negative and they'd make two different versions of that exact same negative. The offline one would be the cheapest exposure of the negative that they possibly can have, right? That would be the ones that the editors would touch, physically splice up, and then they'd make a high quality negative as well in the post-production house, okay? The idea is that they take the low quality negative and they swap it out with a high quality at the very end, okay? That way when you're working, you're not working on the one thing that's worth a lot of money. And in the film world, your negative is the most important asset because it represents your raw footage. Now, we don't have this workflow necessarily anymore. In the video era of filmmaking, we can use the original high-quality master footage that came off the camera to work with in our editing applications. Although at the highest level, the filmmaking process, they do something very similar. It's called proxies now, right? And some of you guys may have seen this. They're like compressed, low-res quality versions of that exact same high-quality shot. Cheap to edit, and it doesn't require a lot of resources. With the idea that once you have picture lock, once you've edited your film, you swap everything out, everything gets up-resed, and you do one master final export from your editing app, and you're on your way. So I like to continue working with this process because I want to make sure that I don't confuse myself later on. This is not an online quality shot. This is an offline one. This is a low quality shot. So let's do this. So this is going to be shot 01, okay? And I almost always, out of habit, put a version number in that, okay? Because we want to be able to give ourselves an opportunity to iterate. Shot 1 could change, right? If we change it, it now becomes version 2 of shot 1, right? By infusing a version number inside of your media management system, you give yourself an opportunity to make changes. Whatever you do, do not do this.
Oh my God, you just saved my life.
Why don't we ever put final in a naming convention?
The final should only be used for the actual final thing, like you just said, you're ready to export to the cinema.
Even then, I wouldn't even put the word final in there, right? Putting the word, what happens if you export this out? You think in your mind that you're done, absolutely fun, absolutely finished. It's on the way to the printer, but then the printer calls you and says, "Oh, hey, I caught an error. You misspelled something in the title sequence." You go, "Oops, maybe I shouldn't have done that graphic at 3 a.m. right before I sent it to the printer because I made a boo-boo." Right? We now have another version after the final one was created, right? The last version is always the most recent version, and it's not uncommon to go all the way up to like version 82. It happens frequently, actually, and it's a good thing to practice. So never put the word final in there because you never actually know if you're done. Okay?
So in Indiana Jones, at the bottom of that camera, I noticed something similar to this.
Yeah.
1_V82 or
Yep.
4. That means they redid that one shot that many times?
Maybe, yeah. I'm not sure if that's what their naming convention was establishing, but it's very likely.
Wow.
Yeah. And directors will come in, especially when they're doing animatics, and they'll play around with things. They'll have one kind of idea, and they'll look at it from a number of different angles, right? Then they'll go home, they'll come back and look at it again the next day, and they'll pick their favorite one. I quite honestly did that this morning. I worked on something last night in an animation, and I got to work today. I looked at it, and I went, whoa, what was I thinking? This isn't going to work at all, right? Okay.
So export as an MOV?
Yeah. And you're not going to have, well, you have a couple options down here. Don't do AVI.
Oh, you do have it. Look at that.
I thought this was gone. They may have just added that in the most recent version. Do either any of these three, you're going to do just fine. I'm going to do QuickTime because I like QuickTime.
What's Express QuickTime?
I'm not sure what the differences are, but they're very few. Okay, look at what's happened here. I hit the save button, and now, check it out. It's just advancing my playhead through, and it's capturing each one of my frames. In addition, this is why I like that record OpenGL version. It turned off all of this stuff. Turned that off. It also turned off my compass. It got rid of the render camera. All the buttons at the top of the viewport were gone. It's really kind of a neat feature, and it makes exporting playblasts and offline versions of your animations very, very easy. And there it is. Okay, check it out. I always like to preview it real fast. Okay, that's it. Very quick. I love it. Let's pump out the other two real fast, and then we'll look at how we can throw all of these together in our editing app. Because we're going to begin editing today, believe it or not. Okay? It's pretty great. It's really easy, actually. I think you're going to be okay. So let's do shot number 2 now. All right. Now in shot number 2, what part of the sequence is it? I think I wanted it right around in here. So I definitely know that I'm not going to go past 160. But where am I going to begin? And here's a great little power user trick. Of course, I could go into my sequence settings and adjust the current start and end to what I want them to be. But there's a more organic way of interactively changing these two values. Okay, or I'm sorry, these two values, the current start and end. And it's the bar that immediately resides below our timeline, this light gray bar. And notice that there's a little divider line, and it kind of turns into a handle down here. Well, if I drag that, I'm now interactively changing the current start and end values. And I can do this in relationship to the values that I'm keeping. Okay? I love how they give us a number here too, because that's what I focus my brain on. All right, so I want, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and export out I'll just export it out right from here. That way I have about frame 40. That way I have a lot of choices as to where I'm going to edit these things together. Modo is not an editing application, right? Even though we can do some basic rudimentary, shot cutting, camera cutting, we don't want to be editing in the render settings in Modo, right? Because it doesn't give us the great flexibility. I want to break reality a little bit here. I think ultimately what I want is that as the rocket ship comes out of the missile silo, I'm going to show kind of the exact same motion twice, right? If you remember in the first shot, the logo popped down, it slid over, and then the doors opened as the rocket ship was coming out, right? And then I cut right as the rocket ship was leaving the silo, right? In what's going to turn out to be the final version of my animatic, I'm going to cut maybe right in here, okay? Something that I wouldn't be able to do doing the camera switching technique here in Modo. All right, let's record this real fast. It just takes a second. Yeah.
One shot per project file, or?
No, I have 3 shots in this one project file, and that's fine. Okay, and that's fine. If you need to pop out a new project file, do it. Do it, okay? Don't make it harder than it needs to be, okay? This is a rough animatic. We're not trying to make a master project file that we can build from. You are absolutely going to scrap almost all of these project files, okay? Yeah. Okay. Good luck, and may the force be with you. I'm live streaming, so you'll be able to get all the content.
All right, thank you.
All right. So let's go ahead and finalize the master shot. Now this one, let's see, I'm going to take it right around, let's do frame 90. And then I'm going to take it all the way to the end on that one. It's a very, very easy system. I like working inside this record OpenGL. It's a great way for us to extract all this info and really start working with it in a direct way over in Premiere Pro. Premiere Pro is going to be the editing app that we're going to use. It's pretty easy to use. I think you guys are going to like it. Who has taken the After Effects class in here? A couple of you guys? Okay. It's similar to After Effects. I think you guys are going to take to it pretty easily. There's really only one big concept when working in Premiere Pro that we have to manage, and that's the media management. Understanding that we have to bring all of our assets with us wherever we go. However, these low-res versions, there's not a tremendous amount of investment in time. Okay, so here's my low-res versions. Shot 1, and I always just like to spot check them real fast. Make sure they came out okay. Cool. Here's shot 2. And I love that they have the frame counter down there at the bottom. That way we have a point of reference back to the scene file itself. And here's the third one. Coolio. All right, let's start working over in Premiere Pro and seeing how we're going to work with all this stuff. Now, there's one thing that we have to do first. We have to create a folder for all of our media. So let's create a new folder. And I want to call this Rocket Ship, Animatic. There we go. And inside of that folder, I'm going to create a subfolder called Assets. Okay. And then I want to put all of my renders inside that folder. Okay. The idea here is that we have one project folder for our editing stuff. Okay. Everything for working in Premiere Pro is going to be placed in that one folder. And this now becomes the exclusive folder that we have to manage as we travel from room to room to room inside of our school, right? Because obviously you're not going to get access to this location except for on Friday afternoons. All right, let's jump in. There it is, Premiere Pro 2015. Okay, it's a great editing application. It's designed to take individual media clips like we've just created and splice and trim them together in a very quick, compelling fashion. After Effects is not an editing application, okay? Right. It's not designed to be a video editing application. Yep. Premiere Pro is. The workflow over in After Effects is not conducive to the artistic, creative editing workflow, okay? In many ways, it becomes a barrier.
Then in After Effects, what is After Effects?
After Effects is really designed for motion graphics and effects on a single shot. Okay. Premiere Pro is a beast. Yeah. It takes a little bit of energy getting Premiere Pro up and running, okay? Just let it cook. It's kind of like After Effects. Just takes a couple bounces, in my case, more than a couple bounces to get this thing up and running. This is the first time this app has been probably opened on this machine, which is why in many cases it's taking so long to open up. Premiere Pro is a great app to learn. It really is, okay? Out there in the real world, the Premiere Pro is a very, very, very professional alternative, okay? I think most recently and most famously, Deadpool was edited all on Premiere Pro, okay? So it's a big-time tool used by big-time filmmakers, okay? Although it is seeming, there we go. Now it's loading all the libraries. Yeah.
You would only put stuff in After Effects after you've rendered it from Premiere, right?
Not necessarily.
Okay. No, go ahead, tell me. Like, when would you send stuff over there then?
When you're making like a motion graphic, or if you're doing like green screening, or if you're doing some compositing, those are all arenas that After Effects really excels in. If I ever catch you guys doing green screening in Premiere Pro, you're going to make a grumpy pat because the tool set in Premiere Pro is rudimentary in comparison to the tool set for green screening over in After Effects.
Really?
Yeah. It's all about finding the right tool for the job, right? Technically, you can hammer a nail with your shoe, right?
Technically.
Technically, you can. Should you?
No.
No. You want to find the right tool for the job. Premiere Pro is the right tool for editing together. It also allows us to very quickly throw in music, titles. I mean, it's the tool that you want to use to put together your film, okay?
I know we're not talking about this in this class, but if we were to do audio editing in Premiere Pro, you'd want us to send that to Audition, right?
You can do some basic audio editing in Premiere, and that's not bad. Audition definitely is the power user tool that will allow you to do some fun stuff. Yeah.
Just making sure, because that's what I've been doing at home. And
Great. Yeah, I love Audition. Audition's a great app. I use it a lot.
You use Sound Booth?
To a certain degree, I do, actually. Okay, so welcome to working in Premiere Pro. It's a really easy app to use. And like most editing applications, the first thing we got to do is that we got to save our stuff, okay? We got to save our project file and start making some connections with that folder. So let's do new project just to make sure it's really kind of all zeroed out. Okay, so I'm going to name this Rocket, not Rick, Rocket, oops, ship, animatic, version 1. And this is the thing that you want to make sure. You want to change the location to where it's saving all these files. Because Premiere Pro is going to generate a whole bunch of stuff for you automatically, including render files, there we go, and some other background like database level ideas that you want to include into this one location. Now, scratch disks, look, they automatically got placed to my project directory, which is what I want. Yeah, that's it. They've done some really great things in the most recent version of Premiere Pro to make this a little bit more easy to work with. Okay, so now that I've created a new project and I'm asking Premiere Pro to send all of my project-specific information to that project folder that I created, I can start importing in all my media. And it's wicked easy, okay? As one might imagine, we're just going in here. If you double-click on that area, you'll get in, and I'm sorry, I did that a little fast. This is your bin, okay? This is your project. This is the bin where all of your media is going to be imported into. So if we double-click in this area, we'll get our standard import dialog box, and I've saved all of my media inside of my project folder. That one right there. They're inside of assets. You can actually do all of them at the same time. There we go. Boom. There they all are. Okay? After Effects, excuse me, all day yesterday in my animation class, I was talking about After Effects. So my brain is already preconditioned to say After Effects. But in Premiere Pro, we're working in a timeline-driven environment. Okay? Our timeline is over here. This is our timeline. Right now, it's empty. Okay? Let's go ahead and make, a new timeline. Let's see, this is the first one. This is the first clip that I want to use, and you can even take a look at it in the browser itself. If you double click on it, it'll open it up in your preview window, and you can play it, which is pretty neat. We're going to get more accustomed to working inside of Premiere Pro as we go along. I'm going to sprinkle in some Premiere Pro almost every single week going forward. And I'm happy with this, so let's just throw that in our timeline by left-clicking and dragging the clip from up here or from our browser over into here. Okay. If we start working here, dun, 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 things are looking good. I like it, very much so. So now that we have a clip inside of our timeline, we can begin to visualize exactly how all this is going to go together. And if you've ever used an editing application, for the most part, they're pretty easy to use, right? The purple bar inside the timeline is a representation of the duration of this clip inside my larger timeline. I can left-click and drag and move it around if I'd like. I can also place my cursor at the edges and do some basic trimming, okay? There we go. I'm going to zoom out. If I click on the timeline, I can move my playhead around and get a really solid preview. There we go. as to what this is going to look like. So let's see. I think I'm gonna cut right around in here. So if I grab my clip and just reduce its out point to the location of my playhead, and get a really great sense of how all this is working together. Okay, cool. So there's the first shot. Let's go grab the second shot, and we'll throw that in our timeline. Now, I'm going to do what's called A/B editing, okay? A/B editing kind of harkens back to a time when we only had two layers, if you will, two slots on our video timeline to start throwing all this together. So this first row is my A row, if you will, okay? And this second row is my B row, okay? And I'm going to be placing my clips on A and B and A and B to very organically and quickly try to figure out the timing of all this and how I want all these clips to work together to make my film.
Really, only 2 slots.
Yeah, there was a time that you only had 2. Now we have an infinite amount of video layers inside of our apps. Maybe not an infinite. Okay, so now I got to figure out when I want this next shot to begin. And this is why we're going to break reality here a little bit. Look at this first shot. So the logo spins, it moves out of the way, and then the doors rotate and open almost all the way before I cut, right? Before I transition over the next shot. Well, this is one of the things I love about filmmaking, is that I'm going to break reality a little bit. This next shot, I'm going to have it start right in there. So I'll trim it to that location, and then I'm going to bump it up right there. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah. So we're actually seeing the exact same motion twice, okay? Because look at the doors on my rocket ship. On the first clip, the doors open almost all the way as the rocket ship starts to come out of the silo, right? And then where I'm choosing to edit the second clip, the doors are still relatively closed, right? I'm showing my audience the exact same thing twice. It makes it a little bit more of a seamless experience, right? It's a good cut. Let's watch it again. Yeah, it just feels a little bit more natural, right? Let me show you the alternative. Now, let's see. I think right around in here is where we actually should cut, right? Keep the motion. It felt weird. It felt rushed. It felt like the entire timeline was compressed a little bit by showing the audience a portion of what they just saw, but from a different angle. It kind of helps our audience decode the animation. This is why we choose to edit, okay? Because we can massage our animation and more finely tune our story at the edit stage, right? We don't want to be doing this over in Modo or Maya or whatever app that you're using to generate all this stuff, okay? Those apps are all about making frames, okay? Premiere is where we take those frames and we make a movie, okay?
Do you know the reason why we do that in the film world? Is it just a psychological reason?
It's just a psychological reason. Yeah, it just feels a little bit less compressed. Doesn't feel like the motions are kind of jumping in on top of each other. The playback engine here inside of Premiere Pro is far superior to what you'd see over in After Effects as well. One of the reasons which makes After Effects the go-to place for all this stuff is that we can trim and edit and playback in almost kind of a real-time fashion and quickly iterate and make decisions. All right, let's get this last shot in here. Okay, now I got to figure out, and this is why that A/B process is so powerful. In every sense, Premiere Pro is similar to Photoshop or After Effects for that matter, that whatever video clip is on top, it's going to block out and occlude the stuff that's on the bottom, just like Photoshop. We're kind of editing and painting on layers of glass, if you will, very similar to that transparency stack that we see over in Photoshop, okay? So my clip number 2 is currently blocking out the visibility of clip numero uno, or number 3 in this case. I'm sorry, I misspoke. So it happens when you try to have an intelligent conversation at the end of the day on a Friday. So I'm not going to worry about the endpoint. I'm just going to park my playhead kind of right here, and then just drag this one around and see what I get. What happens if I lift it there? Okay, interesting. Now, let's see, where am I going to leave that shot? I always like to cut in the middle of a motion, and I really like the idea of showing the audience the missile kind of rise from the ground a little bit. So maybe shot number 2 is going to be a pretty simple one, a quick one. Right about there, that feels good. Let's see how it looks now. Yeah, I think I'm going to change the location of clip number 3 ever so slightly so that the rocket's a little bit more outside of the silo before I cut. Boom. That's pretty good. Now, if I really wanted to go in and look at the continuity of all this, I certainly could. I'm actually pretty close. Look at the angle of the cockpit here. It's right there, screen left, kind of pointing towards, I don't know, like the 8 o'clock position on our sundial, okay? And then when I cut to that third angle, it's relatively kind of spatially in the exact same location, so I got lucky on that one. And that's a darn good looking shot. Wonderful. Pretty cool, huh? Let's play it again from the beginning and see what we get. There it is. Wonderful.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you recommend us not looking at our shots for too long? Take a break and come back and look at them again?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As I mentioned, I was literally animating a camera movement last night. And I thought I had it. And I went to bed, right? I was like, sweet, this is it. Perfect, right? I created a play blast. I let it kind of cook while I was sleeping. I only got a couple hours of sleep last night because I was up till 3 a.m. working on a project. And then I looked at it right before I went to a meeting this morning as I got to class. And I went, what in the world was I thinking? This isn't working at all. And with a fresh pair of eyes and a new non-sleepy brain, I came to the decision pretty quickly that I needed to make some sweeping changes. So having some separation in here is really helpful. Okay? All right. So what do we do with this once it's out, or once it's kind of rendered and done, or finished and done editing? Well, we need to save it, right? And we also need to export it. Because right now, this edit only really resides in Premiere. We need to get it out of Premiere and into a format that we can turn in, publish to Facebook, YouTube, because I'm definitely going to want to share this with my fam, right? Because this is awesome. I love my rocket ship. So let's get it out of Premiere Pro and into a way, or into a format that we then can share to everyone on the face of the planet. Okay? Yeah, go ahead.
For cleanliness, you see how you're using 2 tracks?
Yep.
Would you cut the rest you don't see and move that top one down?
You certainly could. There was a time when you would want to collapse all of your video layers into one. I don't think we necessarily have to do that anymore. Okay. I like keeping these 2 lines available for me so I can slip things around, and it's a little bit more of an organic process. But you certainly could. I remember when I first started doing video editing, we had to, because there wasn't enough processing powers on our computer for it to draw 2 lines of video simultaneously, right? So we'd do this, right? We'd collapse everything. Come on, oop, is it going to let me do it? There we go. We do that. We'd push everything down. It would overwrite those frames. It's still the exact same animation. Just on one track. Yep. All right. Okie dokie. So what's next? We got to get this stuff out of Premiere and into a way that gives us a universal file. Okay. And actually, we probably should. Yeah. If you look very carefully down here in your timeline, you see at the top here, we got that yellow bar. That yellow bar is After Effects' way of saying that, hey, we need to physically render and redraw all these frames real fast. We can render our sequence at any time. I like doing it right before I export, so I can look at it in the timeline before I really export it out. But let's render in or out. There we go. It doesn't take very long. With video files, the rendering is pretty good. And now, check it out. That yellow line, that yellow bar at the top of our timeline has gone green, saying, hey, rock and roll, good job. You've correctly rendered all these effects or all these frames, and you're ready to export. Okay. All right. So now let's do File, and let's do Export Media. Okay. All right. Now this is pretty easy to work inside of, but there's a couple things in here that we'll absolutely want to make sure that we check out. Okay. Specifically, we want to look at some of these presets. Now, at the moment, let's see, I don't believe we're working at 720, but we want to make sure that it's of as high a quality as we can. And here's what, what's that match? Let's do match source. Basic video settings. I guess we are working at 720 or by 480, which is fine for an animatic. Yep, that's good.
Up there is the export settings, the box match sequence settings. Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. I was like, I think this is not right. Like it shouldn't be 720 by 480. Thank you for helping me out there. And let's see.
It's an MPEG.
It's an MPEG, which is, let's see if I turn it off. We'll talk about how we can work with this in the future. This is actually fine for an animatic. It really is. We're going to have an entire day on rendering video files, and we're going to have that day towards the end of the semester as you guys are doing like music and title sequences and a little fade to blacks and stuff on your story. At the end of this project, we're going to strive to make like a little complete film, okay? So we'll talk more about the rendering. But for the animatic, just hitting match sequence is really kind of what we want. Let's export this bad boy. And bloop, we're done.
Wow.
Yeah, it goes very, very fast.
Is that because you pre-rendered the frames?
Yeah, and there it is. It's going to go in the exact same location as your project directory. And here's my animation, my edit.
I'm going to ask if you can show me how you pre-rendered your frames again.
Yeah, it's really super easy.
Okay.
Let's jump back over into Premiere Pro. It was in the sequence pull-down menu, and then I rendered in to out, which is the in frame is basically, the first frame of your animation is your in frame. The last frame of your video is your out frame.
And now, what are these saved as?
What do you mean? What?
I'm assuming if you render before you export the file,
Yeah.
it will chew up your hard drive, will it?
It can. It can. See this video previews folder?
Yeah.
That's where all of your render files are going.
Okay.
Which is why, and there it is, the preview, which is why I asked you to make sure that you point Premiere Pro to save everything into that folder. Mm-hmm. That way all your render files come with you as well. Okay? If you manage the media that Premiere Pro creates for you automatically, it's pretty compelling. Okay? All right. Questions? No? Everyone's generally kind of understanding it? Yeah? Okay. All right. So here's what I would like you to do. Okay? If you return to D2L and go to the week 10 area, as soon as it chooses to wake up and load, let me see if it works on this machine.
Did it log you out automatically?
No, it's just taking forever. Here we go. All right. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to be creating an animatic for your final project this week. Okay? Our goal over the next 7 days is to try to describe this as simply as we can. Okay? Simple. I've shown you some really great examples of some animations, some animatics that were made professionally. That's the target that we're going for. Okay? I hate the way D2L does this, but I actually gave you guys some instructions in here to follow. Okay? I put one area in there that's a little bit more important than the others, okay? We are not creating final models for our animatics, okay? Keep it simple. Keep it basic. I don't want you guys spending time modeling something yet, right? Because here's what's probably most likely going to happen. You're going to get some feedback on your animatics when they're done, right? That feedback very well may change a model, right? If you spend 20 hours making the hero model for the main character of your animation, and then it gets changed next week, you've just burned 20 hours of time working on this, okay? Because now all that energy is meaningless, okay? Because we've made a change to it. We don't want to model something until we have a laser-focused understanding of what it is that we're going to model and what the role of that asset is and how we're going to work with it inside the next stage, which is making the rough animation of our final project, okay? Since we're now getting a little bit more into the specifics of our final project, let's just take a look at some specifics, okay? So I want you to start conceptualizing some of these creative and technical requirements now. These are things that I'm expecting you to include in your animation. And almost every single one of you guys, based on your storyboards, are going to achieve this result pretty simply, okay? So creative requirements. Simple story, okay? Almost all of you guys did a really great job of establishing a simple story that contains a beginning, a middle, and an end. I want you guys, as always, to strive to include a sense of weight for all the movements that we create. Animation is all about infusing life into an inanimate object, okay? So we'll talk more about that in the future, especially as we get into the rough animation stage of this. But that's going to be something I'm going to be expecting you guys to develop, okay? You must include one rigged element, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a character, okay? So there's no expectation that you go in and do a full-blown character rig, but I do want you to continue to work on your rigging skills, okay? There's a reason we spent almost 2 months talking about rigging, because it is important going forward inside the animation pipeline. And I want to see you guys be successful in that area, okay? We're going to talk about replicators next week, because I've run out of time today, and it's too complex of a subject matter. I'm not going to do it justice by trying to jam it into the next 20 minutes, okay? I'm not going to shortchange you guys on that. We're going to talk about replicators in their entirety next time, okay? It must include at least one simulated element. So that's the dynamic stuff that we talked about the last 2 weeks. One, okay? Yuki's got an easy one because she's destroying a brick, right? She's got an easy one, yeah? She's destroying a boulder in her animation. But there's something in there. Every single one of you guys can include a simulated element. You know, like Joe with his snakes jumping across the chasm. Maybe one actually knocks over a rock and woo, perfect. You know, it doesn't have to be an entire, like, you know, wall crashing, you know, thing or something like that, right? It can just be one simple simulated element. I'll leave it up to you and your creative imagination to figure out how to apply that to your final project, okay? In addition, we're going to have an entire day in the not too distant future. Probably not going to be next week, but it'll probably be the week after. We start talking about camera composition, okay? Because at that stage, we really need to be into the rough/final animation of a lot of these shots. And we need to make sure that we're composing our camera shots to capture the right moment with the right lens and the right perspective. And there's some good ideas and some rules, some pirate laws that we should follow, okay, that will get us in closer and closer to a very polished result. Okay, questions on some of those creative and, you know, expectations for your final project, okay? Technical requirements, these are kind of no-brainers. We've basically been following these the entire semester. The only thing that's a little bit different this time around is the duration of this animation. As we've already discussed ad nauseum, it's at least 30 seconds long. So it's going to be a little bit longer than some of the animations that we've created, okay? All this is going to be due on December 15th, okay, which is the last day of the fall semester. So I'm giving you guys as much time as I possibly can give you for you to finish this assignment. Now, you have to make a deal with me, okay? You got to start working on this now, okay? If you wait until December, okay, this is not happening. You're not going to finish this. These things just don't happen in a week, okay? Let me tell you from direct personal experience, it's impossible, okay? It's an impossible task to cram this in the last 2 weeks of school. But if we start now, this is absolutely something that we can do, okay? This is a great opportunity to make a really rockin' portfolio piece. All of the stories that you storyboarded today are great stories that are really great ideas that should naturally fit into a portfolio, okay? One of the things that you're going to be doing for this project is you're going to be giving me all of your Luxology project files, but none of your rendered frames, okay? Because then you'd be giving me gigatons of information, okay? I want your project files, so keep that in mind. You are going to be turning in your project file, and then the final render from Premiere Pro that includes all the clips, kind of what I just did today. Yes, sir? It doesn't. If you want to use Final Cut, I say thumbs up, man. I'm a big Final Cut Pro user. I love Final Cut, but Premiere Pro is officially the app we support inside the GCOM department, okay? We don't have Final Cut Pro in these classrooms. Other classrooms do, but this one doesn't.
I've got to ask you, can we submit an H.265 codec file to you?
Sure, go crazy. Yeah, if you want to use H.265, lights out, man, do it. I have no problem with that. Yeah. If we open up the calendar here real fast, you're going to find that our production schedule is kind of daunting, okay? And I want you to visualize this, just so everyone is on the same page. It's coming up. Here we go. What's new in calendar? Okay, thank you. I didn't really necessarily need to see that, but there it is. Okay, so here we are. We're rounding out a month. Boo! Happy Halloween, everybody. Okay. I don't know if I said this at the beginning of class, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself. Have fun. Honestly, have a good weekend. Have fun. Whatever it is that you're doing, have a great time. Halloween's a fun holiday to participate in. It's okay to dress up and be silly and walk around in costumes. You know, this weekend, it really is. It's fun. It's the one time a year we get to do that, and it's not a problem. However, please be safe in whatever it is that you're doing. I love you all in your own special way. I want to see you back in class next Friday, okay? So please be safe and have a good time, all right? The next time we see each other, we're starting a new month, okay? Here it is, November 4th. Boom, boom, next Friday. Naturally, we will be having class next Friday. I will see all of you next Friday with your animatics in tow, right? Yeah, I want to see some animatics next week, all right? If we flip the calendar forward into November, you can see just by the purple bars up there, we have a lot going on in the month of November that's going to have a direct impact on our academic calendar. Specifically, not next Friday, but the Friday after, the campus is going to be closed in observance of Veterans Day. Okay? Do we have any veterans in the room? If you know a veteran, go give them a high five. At the very least, buy them a cup of coffee or a beer on Veterans Day. They have earned it. They really have. Okay? But we're not going to be having class on Veterans Day. Okay? Go forward in time a couple weeks. Not the 18th, but the 25th, campus is also going to be closed on the 25th for Thanksgiving, okay? So if you look at it, we're meeting on the 4th, we're meeting on the 18th, and then this is where it gets really, really freaky, okay? December 2nd is our last class. Yeah, the 9th. Let's flip it over into the month of December. It's finals. Because check it out. Here's December 9th. Finals begin on December 9th. Okay? So after today, let this sink in. We're only seeing each other 3 more times, okay? Are you freaking out yet? Because I'm freaking out a little bit here right now, okay? 3 more times before final exams begin, okay? Because final exams run from the 9th all the way through the 15th, okay? Now, on the 9th, and that entire week of finals, I am going to be seeing you either in here or over in the design lab as we continue to work on our stuff, right? This classroom will be open, and I'm going to heavily encourage you to come on the 9th. This is going to be a good opportunity to work on your final project, to render, to get all the bugs smashed, and get everything ready to rock and roll for submission on the 15th, okay? If that doesn't motivate you a little bit, I don't know what will, because we just don't have a whole lot of time left to make these animations, okay? We need to hustle. We need to have these animatics done next week, okay? To keep on pace here, and in order to produce something of value, we need to get through this rough draft quickly, okay? For the Friday classes this semester, final exams have started basically for us, okay? It's kind of creepy, 3 more times, man, 3 more times. I have like 8 more lectures in my mind that I want to give you guys, and I only get to pick 3. Which 3 am I going to pick? Replicators is going to be one, because replicators are really important, okay? All right, questions? Yes, sir. This is it. No, homework is done. We are, full court press, all hands on deck on our final project. Okay? The stuff we do in class, we're going to keep learning some stuff like the replicators next week. We're going to learn a lot about replicators, and there's going to be some in-class examples that will help kind of march us through that stuff. So we're going to keep learning some new Modo stuff along the way, but it is all about building our final project since we lose those 2 Fridays in November. Okay? All right, other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah. So after we complete our how many steps do you think we'll have after that before we start actually creating the final model?
Yeah. After the animatic's done, we'll have a really good vision for what our animation is, and then we'll start building stuff.
So this is start right after.
The moment we have the animatic done, and the moment that we see exactly what it is that we're striving to build, we're going to start building stuff. Because from that animatic, I can very quickly go and say, on shots 1, 8, 10, and 12, I need to have a desk, okay? Or maybe on shots 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 10, 15, and 17, I need to have a dresser, right? Since that dresser is in half of my shots, I'm going to put half of my modeling time into that asset, right? From there, we can start kind of putting some production value behind it and ensuring that what we create is going to be used in the right capacity, okay? I've seen this happen before, both here and unfortunately professionally, where folks spend, almost all of their production time on modeling for something that's only going to show up in 20% of the shots, right? Yeah. So we got to pick and choose our battles. If it's only in one shot and we only see it a little bit, we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, right? If it's in every shot, that's an asset that needs to be dialed and perfect and UV mapped and highly textured, right? But if it's a background that we only see in part of the shot for one, part of the scene for one shot, then it's something that I'm not going to spend more than an hour on. The animatics really turn into a blueprint that will help us get to that next stage efficiently and fast. And I have some tricks that I'm going to show you that will help you make that transition. Okay? All right, other questions? Animatics, animatic first. Okay? Good luck. May the force be with you. Have a good Halloween. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye. Have fun, everybody. We'll see you guys later.